Hey everyone, Perry Carter here, talking fake baseball. Today we're going to talk about how to pick a good position player. So before we get started, one big caveat is that if you click on your team page, check to see if you have any scouting. If your scouting is 10 out of 10 like it is on this team, then this is perfect because the numbers that you see, you can trust. Those are actual numbers. If you have zero scouting, then this video really won't apply. So if you want to use what you learned in this video, then you're going to need to wait until the off season of next season, cut some veterans that maybe aren't performing anymore to get your salary below the salary cap, your active roster below the salary cap. And if you have any little level of scouting, that'll at least point you in the right direction. If you have no scouting, this video is not really going to help you because you can't trust the numbers that you see. So assuming that you have numbers that you can trust, what makes a good position player? So first we're going to talk about hitting. The first part of the video, it's all about offense. So if you're looking for a DH who's not going to be playing defense, then this is really all you need to know to pick a DH. So there's 5 offensive stats. There's discipline, contact, batting, slugging, and speed. Discipline will tell you how much your player is going to walk. Contact will tell you how often your player will strike out. Batting will directly affect your batting average, and slugging will give you extra base hits, including home runs. And then speed will allow you to steal bases and really be a menace on the base pads um, to score runs more likely if you're on base. So to start off, like which of these do you want? It's easier to start about which one do you not want. So contact is universally seen as being not very useful. So it's a bit counterintuitive at first because striking out is obviously a bad thing. If you're a batter, you don't want to strike out. But it's been pretty much proven that contact um, doesn't affect whether or not you make an out. It's what happens when the computer sim determines that you're going to make an out. Is it going to be a strikeout or are you going to put the ball into play? And if you already know that you're going to be an out, whether it's a strikeout or putting the ball in the play doesn't really matter too much. So if you put the ball into play, you're forcing the defense to make a play and they could make an error where you get on base. The benefits that you get from hitting the ball into play and the defense makes an error and you make it on base doesn't counteract the amount of times when you hit the ball in play and it forces a double play. So you get 2 outs in 1 instead of, if you instead had a strikeout there, it would have just been 1 out. You still have your man on first. So that's why contact is really, I view it as neutral. You can basically ignore contact when scouting a player. Whether he has high contact, low contact, it doesn't really matter. You can basically ignore it. The other ones, which I consider, whether or not you get on base and extra base hits. So discipline, batting, slugging, all 3 of those are great. If I had to rank them in order, I'd say slugging, discipline, and then bat, because slugging, well, chicks dig the long ball. You get a lot of RBIs if you have a lot of slug. Extra base hits are huge. And walking, yeah, if you can get a lot of extra, get that on base percentage up really high with that discipline, on base percentage is great. And of course, batting, also great. That'll affect your batting average and your ability to also get RBIs. So all 3 of those are great. If you're scouting a player, you're going to want all of those things. Now, of course, you can't have all of those things when scouting a player. But if they have a lot of it, you're going to want to go after that player. So it's not rocket science. One thing to note, though, is that you can't just add up, say, your discipline numbers, batting numbers, and slugging numbers, like just straight up add those 3 across, come up with a number, and be able to scout players that way. The reason being is that there's a bit of an increase in ability as you get to the extreme. So as you approach 100, each ability point gets that much better. So the difference between, say, 53 and 55 for bat is a lot less than the difference between 89 and 91 for slugging. So then, of course, speed. Speed is fantastic. However, it is an attribute that goes quickly. So if you have a young player with a lot of speed, he's probably not going to have that speed his whole career. It's almost guaranteed that by his late 20s, his speed is going to start declining rapidly. So if you draft a player based on the speed, you can enjoy it for a small amount of time, but then after that, it becomes just like everyone else, where he's more of a station-to-station type player. But speed is great. In a regular league, it's kind of a luxury, though. Um, so yeah, basically, if you're looking for a hitter, look for players that have the potential to be, upper 90s sluggers, upper 90s discipline. Obviously, batting average is also really great. So this team right here is in the league MLB World, and I own the New York Yankees. And as you can see, my catcher has great discipline and slug. My third baseman has great discipline, slug. My shortstop, which actually I use as a DH, discipline, pretty good slug. So this is the strategy that I tend to use, since those are my two favorite attributes. But obviously, batting slug is a great combination. Discipline and bat with speed. So if you have the on-base percentage, and then you can get those extra base hits or those stolen bases, and turn those like man on first doubles into a run, that's going to work out for you a lot. So however you want to build your offense, but those are the main attributes you want to look at for a DH or a position player. So switching gears from offense, so we know what makes a good offensive player now. What makes a good defensive player? Now, all of the attributes in defense are not created equal. Similar to how contact is not very helpful, there really isn't a completely useless stat as contact is for offense, but range, glove, and arm, yeah, they're definitely not equal. Glove and arm are much, much, much lower of importance than range. So people have done the math countless times. Like the difference between an average range player and an elite range player, like he could get to 100 or 150 extra balls, maybe even more, depending on what position he plays, per year. Whereas the difference between an average or poor glove versus an elite glove is maybe 10 errors a year. So, range is going to have a much bigger impact on how good of a defender is than glove. And arm, probably even less than glove, depending on the position. But range is really king when it comes to defense. So the question you may be asking is, so do I just want every player on my team with a lot of range except for my DH? I was like, well, I mean, yeah, if you can, that's great. But these high range players are hard to come by. So as you can see for this team, I do have a lot of range at a lot of the key positions. So I have an 88 shortstop, or used to be a 98, but has regressed since he's 31. I have a 90 range second baseman and 87 range third baseman, and then 84 at center field, 95 at center field actually, 93 at left field. So this is good. What I like to call team range. So not all defensive players are equal in importance. So shortstop is the most important. You're going to want high range at the shortstop, and you're going to sacrifice offense to get range at the shortstop position. And then in importance, it's really like in real baseball. There's nothing tricky about this. It's your middle infielders, your center fielder. You're going to want them to be able to get to a lot of balls. Your other positions, it's great if they have range as well. But if you need to make sacrifices in terms of offense, you're going to want to do it at the corner outfield positions and the corner infield positions. And then catcher is actually a pretty controversial one. So I'd say the community is pretty split on whether catcher defense matters at all. So some people just like to use a DH back there. So catcher could be a second DH. And I personally haven't seen any evidence that convinces me fully that catcher defense matters that much. A lot of people like to put a high arm on your catcher, so the arm is this one, so that he'll throw out people trying to steal bases. That's also kind of controversial because the hold runner stat on a pitcher may have more to do with throwing out base runners than arm. I've also had some good success with high range catchers, but nothing that's like gonna wow you. So catcher is really another one where if you need to sacrifice defense for offense, that's a good position to look at. So yeah, essentially, that's the basic crux of your dilemma when you're trying to build a team. How much offense do I go with? And if I go with this offense, am I sacrificing defense? Can I get this multi-tool player that can just do everything, like Thomas Toops? That's great if you can find them. They're usually really high first-round picks, and you're not going to have one of those every year. So I think Thomas Toops in this particular situation was an international free agent. So if your league has that setting, then you can maybe pick up some of these type of players. But yeah, I mean, it's the question that every CSFBL owner has. How much range should I sacrifice in order to get offense? Or on the flip side, how much offense should I sacrifice at these particular positions in order to have a good defense? So the defense is really going to help you out, help your pitchers out. If you have really high team range, especially at the key positions, it could reduce your pitchers, your starting pitchers' ERA by a good 1.5, maybe even two earned runs. So from say an ERA of 5 down to a 3, that is not out of the question. We've seen it before. If I've traded for a pitcher that was on a really crummy team that had poorer range, and put him on my team that had nothing but 90s. You can see a pretty dramatic difference in how a pitcher is gonna react. So that's the long and the short of it. You're gonna want range. You're gonna want slug. You're gonna bat and discipline, and speed is great. And glove and arm are great too if you had it. So to sum it all up, you're gonna want most of these stats really high if you can find it. It's really gonna be up to you how you want to build your team. Whether you want defense position players, real high defensive position players, or whether you're going to want just sluggers or people that get on base. I mean, this is a great thing about CSFBL is that nobody's going to tell you how to run your team. Nobody's going to tell you how to build your team. So have fun experimenting, scouting players, drafting the guys you want, picking them up off free agency. Hope you have a great time, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So please like and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see in future videos in the comments.